Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. I hope you guys are having a nice holiday. It just got better in Oxford, Mississippi, as Ole Miss picks up a commitment from one of my favorite players in the transfer portal, Chris Marshall, who played his freshman season at Texas A&M. Again, this is a dude that was a five-star prospect coming out of the 2022 class, a top 25 player nationally, one of the best wide receivers in his class. Obviously, that Texas A&M class fell apart, and these guys are still really good football players. And Chris Marshall only caught 9 catches for 110 yards his freshman year at Texas A&M. I don't think that has anything to do with his capability. I think that has a lot more to do with how much of a dumpster fire that Texas A&M offense was. And I think he's going to fit in very, very well at Ole Miss. Before we get into it, though, again, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown. The transfer portal has been a wild ride, and it's been a blast talking with you guys in the comment section. So if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. That is the best way you can support the fellas. Let's get into Chris Marshall and what he's going to bring to this Ole Miss team, where I remember talking about this Ole Miss team in the spring after watching spring ball and watching Luke Altmaier and Jackson Dart compete for that quarterback spot. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me was the lack of wide receiver talent on this team outside of Jonathan Mingo. There wasn't a lot of proven capable pass catchers. You lose Ontario Drummond, and then Jonathan Mingo, very, very talented, and I think he did a very good job for Ole Miss this year. But outside of that, there weren't a lot of proven guys, and Lane Kiffin went to the transfer portal and got Jalen Robinson from UCF. He didn't really play much, didn't really produce much, which I was surprised about, thought he would fit in really well. They did hit on Malik Heath coming over from Mississippi State. Chris Marshall is a guy that I think can bring a lot of what Jonathan Mingo brought in terms of that downfield vertical passing attack. That's what Ole Miss likes to do. I mean, they wanted to run the football behind a very good offensive line with a very good group of running backs led by Quinshawn Judkins, the true freshman, who will be back and probably better than he was as a true freshman. But then when you saw that loaded box, when you saw them bring the safeties kind of inside the box, that's when they wanted to hit those vertical shots. And to be honest, I think that's why Jackson Dart got the starting nod, is because he can throw a very, very good deep ball. Chris Marshall, whether Jonathan Mingo, I haven't seen any official news on if he's going to the draft or not. If he does, even if he doesn't, Chris Marshall is going to add to that attack. I mean, this is a guy that has a very, very big frame, sitting at 6'3". I think he might even be 6'4" right now, 210 pounds. And what he was so special at playing at high school and why he was such a high recruit was he can go up and win those 50-50 balls, and he can track balls very, very well. I think that's kind of why Ole Miss wanted to bring him in, and I think that's probably why Lane Kiffin sold him on this Ole Miss program is, hey, we're going to turn you loose vertically and let you use the size and speed on this kid is truly special. And that's why Ole Miss wanted it, for those vertical passing game attack, because Chris Marshall, there's not a better guy in that class than Chris Marshall when it comes to playing the ball in the air, being physical at the catch point, and having legit burners to run by defensive backs. I think this is a great fit. And obviously, Lane Kiffin has kind of made it an emphasis to attack the transfer portal. Ole Miss is doing that again this year. If you remember last year, they were making a lot of noise in the transfer portal. And like how that normally goes, you're going to have a lot of guys leave. But I'm a big fan of who they're picking up too. Joshua Harris from NC State at that defensive line position. He's a good ball player. But especially Chris Marshall, I think he's going to add a lot of juice to this offense, and an offense that wants to be explosive, that wants to push the football down the field. Chris Marshall, a lot of people aren't talking about him because he didn't really do much at Texas A&M his true freshman year. Again, I think that was much more of a flaw in what Jimbo Fisher was running on the offensive side of the football and the lack of quarterback development there, as opposed to Chris Marshall not being a good football player. There's a reason this kid was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. But there's a couple other guys. Trey Harris, another 6'2" kid that a lot of people wanted in the transfer portal from Louisiana Tech. He's going to add some juice to that wide receiving core. And I don't blame Ole Miss for attacking the wide receiver group, because I don't think that was particularly a great position group, especially in terms of depth. And if you lose Jonathan Mingo, I mean, Malik Heath, I think, is a good ball player. But outside of that, Jalen Robinson hasn't looked that great. You want to get some more wide receivers in there who can kind of provide you some juice on the outside, because you know you're going to run the football well. You got to have guys who can win on one-on-one coverage when teams load the box on you. I think Trey Harris and Chris Marshall are both going to provide a lot of value in that regard. And I'll tell you my favorite commit that they have coming in through the portal is Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste. He was a tackling machine at UCF, and he's coming over to Ole Miss playing that linebacker spot. Remember last year they did something very similar with Troy Brown, and Troy Brown worked out very, very well. Lane Kiffin seems to be very, very good at evaluating transfer guys and which guys are going to hit for him and which guys are not. Because you look at that transfer class he brought in, a lot of those guys played very, very good football for Ole Miss in 2022. And I would think Lane Kiffin is going to attack that again. Personally, I don't think he's done in the transfer portal for this early period before winter workouts, but I do think you're going to see him really attack it after spring ball when you see more guys put their name into the portal. And once Lane Kiffin figures out who's staying and who's leaving, and then what position groups do we really need to develop, this is, in my opinion, like a perfect scenario for Lane Kiffin and how he's going to build this program, because the transfer portal, a couple of years ago, the transfer portal really wasn't that talented. You look at the top 50 guys, and some of them were fringe starters, some of them were kind of too deep guys. Are you looking the top 100 transfer portal this year players? I mean, there are legit Power 5 starters at almost every single position. And so if you're a program like Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss that wants to build through the transfer portal, you certainly can do that. And they're getting a very, very talented kid in Chris Marshall, and they're continuing to kind of dominate this transfer portal. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finish in a top 5 transfer portal class again. And if you can do that, you're probably bringing in a lot of good football players, because this 2023 transfer portal class is absolutely loaded with talent, and very excited to see what Lane Kiffin can do. We'll keep it short for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy your Christmas and enjoy your holidays with the family. Just wanted to hop on and talk about one of my personally favorite guys in the transfer portal as he goes to Ole Miss. Again, if you enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.